I got 3 degrees over there, but I got a bachelor's rather in history. And I was also working at the Daily Collegian, the student newspaper. And yeah, so when you break stuff like that down, I think that what we often see is Boston-centric ideas that for the large part, the eastern part of the state doesn't understand the life experience out here. I think from a perspective, the number one for me is healthcare. I mean, we have to have a Medicare for all system. This is something that other, developed countries don't blink an eye at.
Through this entire series that I've been doing with the interviews, I haven't really given a lot of pushback. This is the one that I will give you some pushback on. Welcome back to another episode of Working Theory Podcast. I am JP as always, and today we are joined by an unexpected friend, a gentleman by the name of Jeromie Whalen. He is running for U.S. Congress against Richie Neal, who is an incumbent here in Massachusetts. So I'd like to kind of give the floor over to him and let him give you kind of a brief background of who he is outside of his campaign.
Yeah, well, thank you, JP. You're the man. I think that whenever we get to talk, I think that bridging the divide that we see that is just tearing our country apart, we do a good job at demonstrating how we can actually get along, how can we actually make common sense of this world around us, and how we can do it together. So I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're throwing down. I can't wait to talk. And just a little bit about myself. I grew up in Western Massachusetts in a town called Belchertown. It was a small town, and the nice thing about the town was that it was small enough where you knew everybody's name, right? It was this kind of intersection between rural farming community and suburban sprawl. And I found myself, my parents were teachers on the side of suburban sprawl, but also found myself on the liberal side of the political spectrum. But there was only 2 watering holes in town, McCarthy's pub and the VFW. And everybody would get together and we would all talk, politics included. And at the end of all that, we would, whoever was next and buying the next round, that's how kind of life transpired. And I take that with me and my principles and my values. There's doors always open for conversations. I think we have a hell of a lot more in common than we do apart. So went off to UMass. You can see the flags behind me over here. I got 3 degrees over there, but I got a bachelor's rather in history. And I was also working at the Daily Collegian, the student newspaper. And that was interesting too, because it was kind of looking at information in the 21st century and parsing through fact and fiction is something that we all need to do now, especially in the days of artificial intelligence. And we really got to be able to take a look at the facts at hand and analyze and interpret those. And it takes a new generation to really understand that digital literacy. So I think that that's what we bring to the table here too. The other thing that I was doing in college too was I was working with a young adult with autism, and he's my boy. He was actually just outdoor knocking with me over the weekend, and became my brother, my blood. And I also saw, not only the patients that it showed me and kind of how to situate myself within kind of society there, but it was also looking at what we can do when we allocate resources for the greater good. And we really use those dollars wisely. And, the support system that he had within me and then within the system, it sticks out in my kind of life experience. So I went off after that. I was working in community media. And you can try to think, I don't know if you've ever seen Zach Galifianakis Between Two Ferns, but, it's public access gets a bad rap, but we were really on the cutting edge of technology, using these nonprofit budgets, being real lean and just really doing a tremendous job. We won all sorts of awards for that. You can actually see back here, I got a regional Emmy that I won from some of that work. But the thing that sticks out there was one, kind of telling the story of the people around me in Western and Central Massachusetts and uplifting those stories. It's not just about the stats. It's really about kind of connecting and telling that narrative is the thing that really sticks out and connects people. And then I was the first in and last out of City Hall chambers. And so I was directing all the meetings. I knew all the people. I knew all the state reps, state senators, the city councilors, school committee, and I saw the hard work that they were doing. People are busting their ass on the municipal and state level, and we need to connect the municipal, state, and federal level in a way where we're all talking to each other. So when we talk about, for instance, housing and urban development, a congressional appropriation of money, we're connecting that with the $140 million, Healy initiative for affordable housing. But we're also thinking about where we're going to put this stuff on the planning boards and zoning committees. And so got to connect those dots. And then after that, I went into teaching and was a high school teacher for the last 11 years. Loved every second of it. I was just actually helping out with the yearbook. I'm on a year leave of absence, but I popped in to just help out. And both of my parents were teachers, got a tremendous respect for education as a profession. And you get into it because you want to make the world a better place for, the generations that are coming after you. And it was with that where I had to go into the classroom, 2016. And I had to stare my students in the face after Trump was elected. And, even politics aside here, I know that we're on kind of separate sides of the spectrum here. I think that we could probably both agree that the manner in which we were all discussing things and the discourse that happened, that's not what I teach in the classroom. And kind of the animosity and like the hatred and all of that, I think that the noise just got too loud and we just kind of started, losing the plot a little bit. And so I went into the classroom and I said, I don't get political in the classroom, but I said, I want to apologize on behalf of adults for framing the world like this. Because, this is academics aside, this is not what I teach you. And I try to model best behaviors. We're going to get through this. We got you. It's got to be all right. And they got it. I got some good, feedback from home. I got some wonderful messages from students. It was kind of a collective sigh of relief. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, how the hell did we get here? And who allowed this to happen? And at this point, I had just started my master's and I was like, okay, I'm locked in. I can protect my classroom and my family and my community, and I can do all those things. And, the powers that be are going to solve this. And spoiler alert, they did not solve it. And I found myself in a similar situation in 2024. But at this time, I had finished my master's and I was at the tail end of my doctorate. And I was also looking at a new generation of students that were coming up. And so I went into the classroom, same exact spiel. We're going to get through this. I got your back. Yada. And they just kind of shrugged and they were like, yeah, can we play video games now? And realized that we had normalized this discourse and behavior. And I'm just not down from that. I think that you can tell from now, I'm somebody that, I'm goofy. I'm pretty casual. I very much align with my behaviors and values and beliefs in kind of a working middle class vibe that I was brought up on. And I went back to those same two questions. I said, how the hell did we get here again? And who allowed this to happen? And for that last decade, I was bouncing in between Massachusetts Congressional District 2 and Congressional District 1. And when I was in Mass 2, we had a dope congressman, Jim McGovern, for on my side, alignment a lot with my values and beliefs, and also was pushing for an amendment to the Constitution to overturn Citizens United. The worst Supreme Court case in the history of the Supreme Court, has tremendous implications about our political campaign finance, and it extends into every single situation that we're thinking about. The corporatization of our campaigns is disgusting. And then I was on the other side of the tracks, and I found myself settling down with my beautiful wife in South Hadley. And our current congressional representative is percentage-wise the top recipient of corporate money in all of Congress. And
we'll get to that. Trust me.
Yeah.
But you're actually leading me right into my next question, which is why run against Richie Neal? I mean, he's been in since I believe 1989.
Yep. 1989. He's been there for 37 years, and I'm 38 years old.
Yeah.
And you follow that money back too, by the way, and you actually can look at all the FEC reports all the way back to then. And guess what? There are no small contributions that this guy's getting. It's $200 plus on a lot of different things. He's in corporate from the get-go. And the why question is, well, I think that we can do better. This is a job interview. Who is better fit and better suited to do this job? Is it the 77-year-old top recipient of corporate money percentage-wise? And we've seen what we've gotten. We've gotten higher utility bills. We've gotten housing that's out of control. We have gas that's last time I looked, it was like $4.25. And, I'm driving this 1988 Toyota van around and it's adding up. And so is your life better? And what can we do? How can we bridge these gaps? I think that when it comes down to it, I tell people the 3 Ps: platform, personality, and participation. On the platform
Right.
side, we got Medicare for all, getting corporate greed out of the equation. We're getting screwed all across the district. Health premiums are going up 20 to 40% in 1 year. That's unsustainable. That's breaking a lot of budgets, and you can't shift it around when groceries are going up and utility rates are going up too, and housing costs. We also, Green New Deal. I know that that's something that that can get thrown out there, but if the incentive isn't just to make the planet a little bit of a cleaner place, how about the job creation that comes with it and the economic stimulus from union jobs, right? And so I could go down the list of platform, but
the thing with the Green New Deal that I know a lot of people have big questions with and big concerns with is the future of like the automotive industry,
sure.
The future of just essentially the entire energy market, right? I mean, we get about 7% of our oil from the Strait of Hormuz, and look at what energy, what price per barrel has gone up to. We get the majority of our oil from North America or South America.
Yep. When those barrels hit 100, we're freaking out, and we're well over 100 now.
Yeah, we are, and that's why I'm not opposed as somebody who's more conservative on my end. I'm not opposed to the Green New Deal because I don't like the idea of cleaning up the environment, right? I mean, obviously, I'm a hunter, right?
Yep.
Hunters are some of the most, they contribute the most to conservation. A lot of people don't realize that.
Yep.
And nobody wants to keep, the environment clean as much as people that like to enjoy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Along with hiking, I mean, I do a ton of hiking, but when it comes to the Green New Deal stuff, I would like to see us try to push less of oil bad and like solar good, because in all reality, solar panels, they only have a life expectancy of 20 years. And then after that, they're considered toxic waste. And then what do we do to dispose of them? It's just pushing the problem further down the road. I think it was Nissan. I believe it was, no, Hyundai. It was Hyundai that did this. They had a boat that circumnavigated the globe on hydrogen.
Dope.
And what they did was they extracted the hydrogen from the H2O in the seawater, and their only exhaust was clean air. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
But instead, what the headlines are cow farts are killing America. You know what I mean? That's
I think
so. That's the flip side.
And you got to situate Western and Central Massachusetts in this equation too. I think that there was this. I talked to a lot of people across the political spectrum, and I had people sending me. It was kind of this bill that was getting a little bit misconstrued that was coming through the state house that was essentially saying that you are limited in the amount of miles that you can drive. And
the Freedom to Travel Act.
So when you really
gloriously named that,
and so when you break stuff like that down, I think that what we often see is Boston centric ideas that for the large part, the eastern part of the state doesn't understand the life experience out here. You need a car to get around. That's the unfortunate circumstance. I'm a big proponent of West-East Rail. We've been talking about that for decades at this point. Let's actually connect. You can't even take a train from Boston to Springfield, let alone Boston to Pittsfield or, other parts of the state. I mean, we need to really invest in an infrastructure like that. For us to even talk about situations where we would have that. I think that kind of misses the mark when we talk about just the idea of transportation in Western Mass. We should be, expanding the transportation system, while at the same time, the reliance on fossil fuels is probably a little bit longer than what we would typically think if you're just relying on the MBTA way out in Eastern Mass. And the kind of echoes of that to get to that point out here. Well, if we're going to have those conversations, you gotta make sure that we're funding transportation and we're developing infrastructure to start discussing that to make sense for the constituency out here.
Right. But this is all going to cost a lot of money, obviously. And especially when you talk about the East-West Rail. I mean, one of the biggest, with my background being in law enforcement, when this idea started getting floated around, I was still on the job. One of the big things that was brought up is the are we going to essentially be creating a new drug highway that is completely unregulated? Because there's no TSA, there's no security checkpoints. It's you face more security going, getting into a courthouse or into a city building or a municipal building than you do getting on a train to travel a long distance. And then you look into the potentials for human trafficking. And I'm not saying that those are necessarily all my concerns, but those are concerns that I've heard from people in the area. And I mean, they're valid. There is some substance to them.
Yeah, I think another one that's a good example of this is that something that we really have to have on our radar while we develop this infrastructure is, what is that going to do? Well, it's gonna take individuals that have Boston incomes and bring them and expand west. And what that's going also to do is increase property values, and we're going to get in even larger bidding wars. And so as we think about the things that make Western and Central Mass great, we need to preserve one of the things that makes it great is, comparatively speaking, I mean, we're out of whack across the nation, but comparatively speaking, we have more moderately priced homes than even Worcester, or even just like that kind of central eastern Mass. So we have to think about that expansion. We have to think about the ways that it's going to impact the individuals so they're not priced out of their own homes. We're seeing Prop 2.5s override. Those are property tax increases over here. We got to make sure that we're giving the generation that came before us the opportunities to stay invested in their communities. And as we expand that transportation or expand that infrastructure, we got to be looking out for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, everybody likes their property values to go up until they realize that once their property gets assessed and they start getting taxed more. It's one thing if you're buying a property and you're like, hey, I'm going to live here for 10 years and move somewhere else. But if you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s and you're looking to retire, and you're going to be facing a fixed income, and then so say you're out in Western Massachusetts, right? And then you've owned a home for 20 years, you just paid off the mortgage, you go into a fixed income where you're only really getting $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
And a lot of that you've already had accounted for. You're spending that elsewhere. But your property tax every year goes up and up and up because of this east-west rail. I mean, how fair is that? And I understand that there's the whole, the boomers this and the boomers that. And I see that side of it, but I also see the side of it from their point of view. Because I mean, my parents, my mother, that's her age group. And she shouldn't have to be forced to move out of her home or to sell her home because her property value just keeps going up because of something that the state did, Yeah.
I think that the certain formula that we're seeing, or we should have a heavier reliance on some of that infrastructure in relief, to be honest, on the federal level. Because I think we're wasting money on a massive level when it comes to the federal government. We scrutinize our budgets on the municipal. I'll give you an example. In the town that I live in, we just tried to increase our property taxes. It was going to be something enormous just to have service level funding of schools. So $11 million over 5 years, which translated into basically an overall increase of property taxes of somewhere in the ballpark of $2,000 to $2,500 per household. That's a lot of money, right?
Right.
Last year, the average taxpayer spent $4,000 on war. So we're sitting here fighting each other, fighting our own neighbors, the people that we see at the grocery store and at church for over these property taxes when we're totally mismanaging money on the federal level. So that whenever I talk about kind of bringing relief and really allocating those federal dollars back in, that should be a reinvestment. When you give your tax money to the federal government, it should be a boomerang that comes back in and you're getting at least something out of this deal. Shouldn't be going for overseas dropping missiles on schools. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of arguments there, but to kind of bring it back to what our main focus is for today's show, especially, right?
Yeah,
like
I love going on tangents like this, Jake.
No, you're good. I love it, man. And that's part of running a campaign. I totally get it. But do you think that the people of Massachusetts right now are actually being represented by like working class values, or do you think it's more of institutions?
I think that across the board, what we're seeing is the infiltration of corporate interests dictating all the decision making, and that's certainly true on the federal level. If you look at where we are from political campaign finance, it's across the board, red and blue. They're all taking money, and it sucks. And so those are, when the things that what we truly need, and we don't even need to necessarily go into anything like Medicare for all. We can go into just for instance, VA benefits, right? Something we probably agree on over here. Well, the reason why we don't have certain elements of this is, again, go back to the healthcare lobbyists, corporation, health insurance industry. They don't want to necessarily make it easier or make it more efficient, because that bloat is a feature, not a bug. And so I think that that's the hard part of all of it. When it comes to the actual individuals that are, is Massachusetts, going back to the question, is Massachusetts really represented? I think that another thing that representation is under attack right now, and democracy is really being undermined, is this kind of mutually assured destruction with gerrymandering. We are getting to the point where both parties are really kind of slicing up territories for the benefit of themselves, when it's not really what's true representation is. You hear that a lot when it comes to the state here. Republicans saying that they don't have a voice necessarily. I think that what is the sad truth is that we're going to see this, especially because of some Supreme Court decisions that recently are being applied now. We're seeing more of this kind of partisan gerrymandering rather than less of it. And so that factors into not being represented. So you got the corporate interest, you got the kind of gerrymandering and other tactics that kind of silence voices. And I hope that we can get to a point where we can kind of bridge that divide, or reasonable heads can prevail and say that this is not good for, democracy.
Well, you have to be able to find your common ground. I mean, it's funny. Gerrymandering is a Massachusetts invention.
Eldridge Jerry. It looked like a salamander. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And a lot of people don't even realize that. But no, it's funny because, a lot of people, they'll try to use something to benefit their own interest and not realize that it could work against them in the future.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
One other thing that I, obviously, because I'm on social media and everything, I'll post something and then somebody will just put one word, audit, and I'm like, yeah, I voted for the audit. 72% of Massachusetts did. This is like one of the most bipartisan things that we all support. I think that when I have conversations too, one of the things, I talked to this constitutional scholar, and he essentially said that it's dead in the water when it comes to the Supreme Court looking at it and reviewing it. Something that can get on a ballot measure can go on can be voted on, and the way in which that certain ballot is. But I don't care about that. The philosophy of the audit is we need more open transparency. We need better public records. That is a level of accountability to the actual residents of Massachusetts that we can all agree on. And so this isn't Republican or Democrat. This is common sense.
Well, time of recording, I actually just posted an episode, which is a follow-up from the state rep guy that interviewed Peter Warren. And it was literally an 18-minute episode of just him talking about the audit, because he was like, we got to hammer that one through. We didn't get through that in the episode. And I was like, okay, we can film a follow-up. But with all of this being said, like, what is something that you would do differently if you were already in right now? So if you were in Neil's seat, you were in Congress, what is something that you'd be doing right now?
Reaching out to Republican town committees and reaching out to individuals across the aisle, because when you represent the district, you represent everybody, even the people that didn't vote for you. And I don't think that we have, first off, the current congressman hasn't had a town hall since 2017. So he's not listening to anybody, Democrats included. But you need to have those sometimes tough conversations, but you also need to be, hold yourself accountable and be listening to everybody. I think that is especially true now. If we can, bridge those gaps and show that we may differ in the way in which we attack the problem, but these are universal problems. And I want you to know that at the end of the day, even if we disagree of how to solve the problem, I care. That I'll show up, even if you're gonna, yell at me, you deserve the respect to be able to hold your, represented officials accountable. And so, there is on day one, there's a plan co-signing bills to set that legislative agenda and really, attack it full force. Create a bipartisan support through relationship building, going knocking on every one of those 434 doors in the House, developing those relationships, even with individuals, on the opposite side of the aisle. But having those conversations and having those relationships with the individuals that are representing everybody in your district, that's what's really important to me.
So why do you think that the current Democrats aren't necessarily doing that?
I think, first off, I think the partisan politics can get a little scary at this point. I mean, I was just listening to a podcast right before we were on here, and it said that somewhere in the 14 to 21% of Americans agreed with the statement that it's okay to use violence against somebody for political reasons. And so that's scary, man. I mean, I haven't had any close calls or anything, but I think that that partisanship is driving us further and further apart. People are scared to have those conversations, but they're necessary, especially considering the circumstances that we're in. If we're going to just keep on furthering divide, and so that comes to mind. I also think that from taking the more and more corporate money that comes into play, your Rolodex gets filled with executives rather than average everyday people. Anybody that donates to my campaign, no matter how small, I give them a call or I send them an email or I shoot them a text and I say thank you. That includes one of my students who gives $1 a month. One of my high school students gives $1 a month. And so I think that they've largely kind of been disassociated with the idea of these are individuals that elected you for this position. And rather than going in, spending $64,000 at a 4-star resort, which is literally what the congressman has done, Del Mar restaurant, $16,000. This is not, I'm going to Subway and I'm like, damn, I can't get a $5 footlong anymore.
What happened to the $5 footlong? That is one of the biggest travesties. That is one of the biggest travesties to our generation is the loss of the $5 footlong.
$5 footlong. That's how that the economy
and the dollar menu. There's not even a dollar menu anymore.
The McChicken, 3 McChicken sandwiches right there. We're good, right?
I'm not going to say what it's called, but my favorite was always you buy a McChicken and a McDouble.
Oh, okay.
You put them together. And,
put them together.
Yep, I'll let the comments sort out what that secret menu item.
You got to put the fillet of fish and then the double cheeseburger and make the
the land, sea, and air
McSurf and Turf Deluxe.
Yep, land, sea, and air burger. But no, I mean, as far as leading back to something that you just said, when it comes to the amount of people that are willing to use violence, I mean, we've seen it with the current administration. Trump has had multiple attempts on his life, and a lot of that has been, kind of under-investigated, in my opinion. I feel like we should know a lot more about Butler. We kind of know a little bit more about the Florida one. And then this most recent one where the guy Naruto runs through Secret Service with a shotgun and a pistol. I mean, it's weird. It's insane. But I know that one of your platforms is kind of supporting another assault or assault weapons ban.
Yep. Yeah.
And my biggest thing to you is like, how do you balance constitutional rights with your public safety concerns? And what's your way around that?
Yeah, I think that this is the question that I get from a lot of my conservative friends and even individuals. They go, the first thing out of their mouths, what do you think about the Second Amendment? I remember, I'm 38. I remember a time that we had the assault rifles banned. I think that the equation of less guns equals less deaths. We have those stats right there. I also, my hunting friends, there's a good portion of those individuals that go, yeah, when my guns and what I do is I don't need a assault rifle to go out and shoot a deer or to shoot duck, and so we have to weigh the idea of where do we draw that line. And I think that, the old adage of, well, would you be able to have a bazooka? Can we discern where we carve out that? And I'm open for that. I think one of the things that sticks out is, I got this question from a Vietnam vet, and, I'm saying, I'm for the assault rifle ban. And he said, the I got drafted and got flown over to another country with that rifle in my hand, and now you're saying that you can't have it, or I can't have it rather. And I honestly, that was a hard question to answer. And so, what does that mean? It means that I am personally in favor of an assault rifle ban, going back to where we were in the 25, 30 years ago, whatever it was. Does that mean that we can't talk about it and think about some common sense gun laws? And also, when I think about these things too, I think about how it alleviates some of the headaches that people experience when having guns that they have responsibly, and the things that we handguns, for instance. In some instances, you can have a license to carry in Massachusetts, for instance, try to go over the border, and you're doing something illegal. So
yeah, well, we need to figure out a national reciprocity.
Yeah,
is
so
a huge thing.
I think in situations like that, I think it's strengthening some of the kind of the security and gun guidelines of it. I think it's approaching it from there. Again, I am personally in favor of an assault rifle ban, but to the degree in which we grandfather certain things, or there's a buy-in program, or there is some sort of way in which we can kind of mutually say, okay, this is the way that we're going to approach it. I think that there's some middle ground there, and I think that the minute that it becomes like this yes or no type thing is the minute that we kind of lose the script on it all, and then emotions get raised. But I think
so.
Yeah.
Through this entire series that I've been doing with the interviews, I haven't really given a lot of pushback. This is the one that I will give you some pushback on.
I love it. I've
got to. I have to. If 93% of crimes that involve firearms are committed with firearms that were obtained illegally, then how does restricting the legal owners do anything to affect that? I mean, in all reality, especially in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it's already one of the strictest. It's either the second or third most strict state to own a firearm in. If you are a legal gun owner and you purchase a firearm, first of all, we have a roster in the state. You can't even own most guns, and that the number of guns that you can purchase is shrinking. And you used to be able to get around it with, transfers and stuff like that. And the new firearm bill has kind of even restricted that further. Now you have to go through a federal firearms licensed person, like a gun shop, to actually transfer any sort of AR. I think it's almost any gun at this point. I fail to see. I mean, I know your heart's in the right place, and that's the best part about this stuff is, like, we argue about this stuff because we care, right? So at the end of the day, we're both trying to do the right thing, but I don't understand how restricting what legal gun owners can do will change the crime rate. Because, I mean, look at places like Detroit, like Chicago. These are gun-free cities where you're not allowed to have firearms, yet they have the highest rates of firearm crimes, or firearm-related crimes.
I think, just using the same analogy, if you go over and say, drugs are illegal, we still have, it's where the illicit sales of anything take place. There's going to be dark markets that are going to evolve because of just the way in which, individuals try to make money illegally or otherwise. That's not to say that we throw up our hands and we say we can't actually make this more safe or more secure in these things. And I think if you go to Massachusetts, for instance, I don't know these stats off the top of my head, so don't quote me, but Massachusetts is one of the most safe states gun-wise. We have the most restrictive gun rights, and we have the least deaths. And so we have to, again, correlate those things to, I mean, gun deaths are out of control. It's the leading cause in adolescent deaths, and it's more than any kind of illness. Also, when we talk about this stuff, we have to situate the idea of suicide in here. And so it's not just people going and, creating these, mass shootings. It's individuals that find themselves, going through the throes of mental anguish and making a sudden decision that that we have to equate what's going on in mental health as well and intersect that. But I think what we see in Massachusetts is the idea that if we do have comprehensive gun laws, it does save lives in the long run. And I also want to situate that idea of individuals inflicting harm on themselves.
My biggest thing with it is, I mean, when it comes to the sewer slide end of things, if people want to take their own life, right, they're going to find a way to do it one way or the other. And I'm not saying that to justify them being able, having the opportunity to just take the quick way with one thing or the other. You know what I mean? As a police officer, I responded to the majority of teens that were in crisis that I responded to. They were attempting to do that by taking a bottle full of, Benadryl or something like that, it was terrible. That's not a good thing. And it wouldn't have been a good thing if they had their hands on a firearm. But in Massachusetts, the teens, they can't get access to that kind of thing. I mean, the more people die every year from car accidents, especially in Massachusetts, than firearms.
I would say that a car, I mean, I'm in Western Massachusetts, rather.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to, a car is a necessity over here, right? To get from point A to point B. I don't think you could be riding on your, AR-15 to ball.
Hey, you know what? Some people might. You never know. Maybe we'll get Aladdin over here. Figure out how to. You never know, man. There's some weird stuff that could happen, though.
Yep, but the propulsion system. I've shot some guns that are just like they have some blowback. Maybe you'll get.
I think that first things first. I got to get you out to the range.
Yeah, I'm definitely down. I've been to the range. I
want to run you through some good drills. And I want to have you play with some fun guns. And I'll tell you what, maybe we'll get you to change your mind once you see how much fun it really is.
I don't think I'll be changing my mind, but it's fun nonetheless.
Okay. Well, either way. So another big thing that you have going on, which you spoke about earlier, was the whole, AI stuff. So in the big beautiful bill, the original draft of it, it didn't make it through the end of it, but there was one segment that said there was going to be a 10-year ban on making any AI legislation or any AI restrictions. That ended up getting pulled out before it was finally voted and passed. And that was one that me, as somebody who's typically more conservative, I was a little bit concerned with, because some of the developers of AI are more concerned about AI affecting the human race than nuclear war or anything like that in the future. So if you end up in Congress, what are some things that you would do that involve AI? Would you be opposed to AI restrictions? Would you, how would you kind of handle that? Because this new technology could be make it or break it for the human race.
Yeah, I think I actually am really excited to have these conversations, because I just finished up my doctorate in mathematics, science, and learning technology at UMass. And my side quest in all of that was looking at AI in education. And I think that we are seeing a groundbreaking technology be implemented with little guardrails, and it can have either potentially do amazing things for the human race, or it can be one of the fastest ways to our utter destruction. And that is not even an exaggeration. There was hundreds of leading scientists and stakeholders in the field of technology that signed on to that very statement, saying, we are very concerned about this and we need to think about this comprehensively. Thinking about it comprehensively is actually creating first off, it's understanding the technology, because I don't know if you saw the TikTok hearings, but we have these guys in their 70s and 80s not even knowing how to log into an app or download it from the App Store, dictating what we're seeing with these groundbreaking cutting edge technologies. And that is very dangerous right there. They have
one of my favorites is when Zuckerberg was in front of Congress, and one of the congressmen was saying, well, Mr. Zuckerberg, does Facebook use my Wi-Fi when I'm using it? And it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
he's sitting there. He's like, I don't want to be disrespectful to the guy, but I don't know how
Yeah.
to answer this without, you know, and to your point, like, I mean, we do have people who are in their 70s and 80s that are regulating, you know, cryptocurrency that they have no idea what it's about. I
Yeah.
mean, one of my biggest concerns is, these buy now, pay later things like Klarna and Afterpay.
Oh yeah,
A
for
lot of
sure.
people, well, and the problem is the people that are regulating that, they don't understand anything about it. They don't realize that, I mean, these are not banks, right? So every time that you use one of these, buy now, pay later apps to purchase a burrito on DoorDash, it's getting hit as a personal line of credit.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And just situating everything back to that artificial intelligence, not only are we seeing it kind of just things implemented without any kind of care or thought. It's the typical idea of technology, move fast and break things. Well, the things that we're breaking are kind of people's budgets, like you're talking about. We're
Right.
breaking the job market. We've already seen tens of thousands of jobs this year alone. I think it was in May, there was over 40,000 jobs that were axed because of AI. And what is going to happen? Well, a corporation that is relying on the bottom line for shareholders is just going to look at human beings as a line item rather than a human being that we need to be thinking about for a job and a family and all these things. Don't get me wrong. I think that there are certain utilities for AI that can really benefit society. But when we're just seeing dollar signs, that's going to have a detrimental effect across across the economic landscape, and especially when it comes to jobs. And so I really want to be proactive on how we're kind of implementing those, how we're implementing AI rather, how we're thinking about that intersection with individuals, especially and how we can actually uplift some job sectors. For instance, manufacturing, high skilled manufacturing. That is something that we're particularly looking at in Western and Central Massachusetts. Kind of the industrial age that we had in the late 19th early 20th century. Like, we have some of these buildings. Let's get some money, infuse that in here. Let's start making chips out here. Let's get some vocational trainings to really kind of make a robust infrastructure of this stuff and get back to work. And at the same time, when there is just a CEO that's making way more than they should, going, oh, I think that I can, take that job and automate it. That's we got to be thinking about the underlying worker and workforce, and ensuring that there's opportunities there, rather than just say, okay, what can we axe and how can we just make this leaner with robots?
Right. Well, it's funny that you bring up the CEO making more than they should, right? I actually, I didn't even, this is not in my notes. I just thought about it.
Yep.
AOC came out the other day and said on a podcast that there's no way that somebody could make $1 billion. And I kind of sat there and I laughed, and the people that I was with were laughing at it. There are a lot of ways to make $1 billion. It's not impossible to make $1 billion. I understand where she might have been coming from, but you are you're more on the tax the rich side and pro the billionaires tax, right?
Say that one more time.
You're good. You're more like pro. You have a whole stance on the billionaires
Oh
tax,
yeah,
correct?
stir taxes on the
Yeah.
ultra wealthy. Absolutely. We could just roll it back to Reagan. I mean, we could look
Mhm.
at tax rates under Reagan, right? The greatest conservative president in contemporary American history. We could look at tax rates there. But yeah, I'm in favor of surtaxes for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just funny though because the way that she said it, there's no way that anybody could make $1 billion. Well, I mean, Bill Gates did it pretty easy, Elon Musk did it. I mean, it's not impossible to make that kind of money, and I don't think that you should necessarily you know, be faulted for making money. A lot of people have said, "Oh, it's sinful to be rich. Rich people don't go to heaven." I don't think that's the case. I can't subscribe to that. I think that we should incentivize people that have a lot of money to do the right thing with their money. I mean, you and I were talking the other day about how if you're a billionaire, you're never going to be able to spend that money, you know, until you're done, until you pass away eventually. So why don't we incentivize it instead of saying, hey, if you make this much money, you have to pay this much more. Instead, what if, just a crazy idea, you say, hey, you have all this money. If you are philanthropic with it and you do the right thing with it, maybe you get a break here, you get a break there to make more, to help more people.
Yeah. I think that what we see is we'll throw out trickle down economics that doesn't work aside.
Yeah.
One of the things that is, okay, well, the richest individuals, they can give their money charitably, right? The problem with that is that somewhere in the, I think 400 or 500 richest people, they did an analysis on how much charitable donating they give. And it's under 5%. And it is only to things in which they care about, right? And what are the things that you care about? The things that you're in proximity to, right? So it's not necessarily the urban center in Springfield that has primarily Black and brown students at it. It's going to be the private Catholic school that you sent your kid to, right? And so what I think surtaxes on the ultra wealthy is really the way to go, is that we can say, okay, just like in Massachusetts, we can, the Fair Share Amendment, okay, we're going to do 4%. Maybe 5% surtax on $1 million. And we don't even have to have it at $1 million, because I think $1 million in today's, we're talking about the $1 billion. $1 million doesn't, the average home price in Massachusetts is somewhere in the $600,000 to $650,000 range. So we're talking about millionaires being more so here. Let's shift that up. 5 million, 10 million, 25 million, 250 million, 500 million. If you put a surtax on those individuals, well, it's not now allocated to just certain things. And you can kind of earmark that for things like education, transportation, and infrastructure, things that we've already proven that really work in Massachusetts. I'll give you a perfect example. That 4% surtax on $1 million or more here, what does that get you? Well, in my classroom, it gets me syrup spilt all over my desk because a kid had his breakfast and was eating waffles and forgot that little syrup and he spilled it, right? But that's a free breakfast that kid had. And I know that kid didn't have breakfast otherwise at home. And I feel good about that. And I don't lose sleep at night having a person that makes $1 million of income plus having $4 on every dollar going towards something like that, or free bus fare. Right? These are very practical things. And this is not just some waste or bloat in the system. These are things that, one, they don't miss that money. And two, I see that money day in, day out, and we use that and allocate that efficiently. So that's where I'm coming from that point of view. I mean, I'm all for thinking outside the box, but I think that corporations are skirting their taxes. The ultra millionaire class, ultra wealthy class, has just separated themselves so far removed from the working and middle class. And then we have to take the brunt of it, right?
So this is just hypothetical.
Yeah, let's do it.
If we get the audit through and we find billions of dollars of saving through waste, fraud, and abuse that we all know has been going on, if we pinpoint that and we can afford all of those things that you just said without increasing the taxes on billionaires, would you be opposed to saying, okay, well, we found the money from inside, so we don't have to raise those taxes?
I would rather do that on the working middle class. I would raise the tax threshold on so it's a relief for the working middle class, and I would still have that millionaire's tax. And the reason why is because it's not going to be missed. And I rather give that relief to the actual people. $500 of relief is not created equal. When you think about $500 to somebody that has $1 million income versus $500 for somebody, I was at the vet center in Ludlow, right down the road from me, right here, right? And I was at a food pantry Thursday, and there was a veteran that was living in his car with his son because he needed to save $600 by getting food from the pantry. I'd rather give relief to that guy. I'd rather give relief to that. And when if there's that 4% on a millionaire, I promise they're not going to be, and there's no trickle down that's going to happen with that money either. And so I rather look at the working middle class and give them the relief rather than rescind that 4%.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about veterans in the state, it's another travesty. I mean, we spend it's between $50,000 and $70,000 a year per inmate that's incarcerated in the state. Thankfully, Massachusetts has a pretty low recidivism rate compared to the rest of the country, but we're not doing as good as we can. So we spend, essentially up to $70,000, if not more, per inmate per year. We don't spend a fraction of that on our veterans.
That's disgusting.
And it's just, I don't know. But one of the big things when it comes to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is, we're looking at a deficit of residents. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I graduated high school with that have moved out and they're not coming back.
Yep.
I'm considering leaving the state.
Yeah, I think that to that point on population decline in Western Mass, where I'm from, we're looking at 9% over the next decade. And so what does that do? It impedes new growth. It also factors into school budgets. The formula in Massachusetts, Chapter 70 formula, looks at enrollment numbers. And when you actually have a decrease in enrollment, you start decreasing the school funding. And so you have this kind of perfect storm created where, and it's such a beautiful place that I live too. It's just like mountains and rivers and, hunting and hiking and doing all this stuff, man. It's just really good. So to see it in that decline and to know the economic consequences of that, we should be welcoming people in. It should be a place that you can afford, that you stay for multiple generations, and we should be uplifting that. And one other thing that I want to go back to too is the idea of the cost of the inmate. One of the things that I think is the problem with that is that we have for-profit prisons. And that right there factors into the idea of all the corporate greed that comes into the situation. Now, there's a lot of different reforms that we could do, but I think that also thinking about the situation where there is a corporation that stands to gain within that, if they're going to try to milk government contracts as much as possible. That's what's going to happen. Just like the healthcare system tries to create as much bloat as possible, they're going to try to find ways in which they can maximize their profit. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these are monopolies as well. Like, who's going to open up? Are you going to have a competitive prison system?
For-profit prisons definitely exist. I don't believe that they exist in Massachusetts, but I mean that's definitely something that you'd be able to tackle on a national scale. In your next office.
Yeah.
As far as I know, in Massachusetts, we don't have anything close to a for-profit prison.
Yeah. Just talking about about in general.
So this is the thing: is you are the first U.S. candidate that I have. So I'm used to state guys. So I got to be like, okay, hold on, think bigger, JP.
Yeah, sometimes I get locked into the federal level, and people are like, what?
No, but realistically, that's where your scope's going to be. So I don't blame you for that one bit. But it's just, I mean, the affordability crisis is not just a Massachusetts issue. I mean, there are little towns that are paying people $50,000 to move into them, in the Midwest, and it's getting to be kind of scary. It's like on a national stage, we need to make sure that we have an economy that can survive the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, and we're incentivizing home ownership because it seems like the answer to affordable housing is always apartment blocks. And we saw that in the Soviet Union, and that didn't work out well for them.
Yeah. I think when we tackle affordable housing, we need to be developing more. We need to lower barriers too. I think that we can both agree on this. Sometimes that red tape is something that is just a pain in the ass on a whole bunch of different fronts. It impedes actual progress on the development side. And so things that I actually benefited from, my parents-in-law, they were downsizing. They really had nowhere to go in their downsizing, but they knew that they couldn't take care of their house and the property that they were on. So we created an accessible dwelling unit, ADU, in our in the basement quarters of the house that my wife and I live in. And it was awesome because that was a state initiative that kind of created the situation where we didn't have to navigate this municipal minutia, and it lowered the barrier for construction. and we're all benefiting. We get we get a little bit of help and relief on our mortgage. They actually downsized into something. We're thinking about family planning as well, and they can be on site with us as a family, as a unit. That's awesome stuff. And so the other thing is, tariffs. Tariffs have created a situation where you can't even buy a 2x4 now. And so we have to think about the economic consequences of some of these federal initiatives that are just destroying the idea that we can be actually constructing. I was the first house in on a cul-de-sac of now 100 plus houses in Belchertown, in the small town that I was in. And I watched all those houses, and I'm thinking, wow, that was a tremendous, there are now thousands of individuals that live within, the Western Mass. Why can't we create that? We do have land. We do have ways in which we can think, proactively about planning and zoning and do all this. The thing that hems it all up is that you start making a new house now, and it's a $500,000 easy. And so
Oh, yeah.
it's just it de-incentivizes the creation of new affordable housing. And then what do? Well, you create these larger structures that are more tightly together because it's less resources, but now you have everybody within the same place. And I think that we have to think about the idea of construction situated in this. Also think about the kind of guidelines and make them common sense. We can kind of streamline some of this stuff.
So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire stuff real quick, okay? All right. Term limits. What do you think? Yes
Absolutely.
or no?
Yes,
Yeah?
you need term limits. Yeah.
Okay.
Somewhere in the 12 year range, 12 to 20. I could get somewhere in that, probably on the lesser side.
Yeah. I mean, no, I agree. 12 to 20 is fine because, I mean, realistically, especially when you're having to run for your life every 2 years, I almost think that the term itself should be increased by 2 years and then implement term limits. That's just my opinion because how are you expected? Should you get elected? Your first year, you're going to be getting used to it. And the second year, you're running for re-election already. It's hard to fight for your constituents when you're having to constantly be fighting this battle.
Yep. And in the classroom, right, it kind of took 4 years to get for the turnaround of everybody in the school to kind of get the culture that we were creating. 4 to 11, I was off to the races. I was doing a lot of things, doing a lot of initiatives. So I think that you can get the job done in that. And then, time for the next generation, to be honest.
Right. So next one, congressional stock trading. What do you think?
Ban it.
Yeah.
So I mean, the idea that we have apps right now that you can track Nancy Pelosi's, but Nancy Pelosi, anybody's stocks, you have certain information that you're privy to that the ordinary average citizen doesn't. That is going to inform you in a way that is insider trading, in my opinion. So ban it.
Nuclear power, yes or no?
Nuclear power is going to be a jury still out for me. I think that we are in desperate need of energy here. I think that we have seen disasters with Fukushima and Chernobyl. I also think that new technologies have created a safer environment for these things, but I don't have all of the answers to that. And we've closed down certain plants like Yankee, for instance, around where I'm from. I would rather look at renewable energies like solar and wind implemented. It's not there necessarily, but battery storage that is going to supplement this stuff that if there's a catastrophic disaster, we're not going to have a wasteland of consequences for millennia. So
I would encourage you to look into the
not going to say no, but I would rather be on renewable energies and other resources.
I would encourage you to look into the modern chain reactors where it's not like Chernobyl, it's not like 3 Mile Island, it's not like Fukushima. They're very, very small and they chain them all together. And if one of them does, heaven forbid, have a meltdown, it's a lot easier to shut down and it's a lot quicker and there's no environmental issues.
Yeah, I think the generational perspectives come into play here and technology. I think that the same disasters that we've seen because of actually human error is a lot to do with the ones in previous, although natural disaster for Fukushima, but even the placement of it, that's crazy. But I think that we got to go to the table. We should never immediately close down something while at the same time, let's look at renewable energies from wind, solar, and the likes.
So this is going to be one of the biggest ones for you.
All right.
What do you think is the biggest threat to America right now? Is it debt? division, China, Russia, AI, or corruption?
I think it's division, to be honest. So I think if we can't find compromise, then we're not going to be able to progress. I think
Mhm.
that all of those represent threats, but I think that if we can't find some sort of agreement to approach some of the situations, then we're going to be at a stalemate, and we can't allow that to kind of sow a rift in the fabric of America. And so, really big on the interconnectedness of it all, of us all. And so, I would say division is the underlying factor that bleeds into all of this. I also think that you mentioned China, for instance. I think that China is a threat for a couple of reasons. One, it undermines the idea of democracy, but it also is something where you have a pseudo dictatorial regime that says we're going to do this and you have to do it, and it actually accelerates some of the production value of what we're talking about here. And so, if we can't unify in a way that is reacting, responding to technology or environmental situations or economic impacts of various things, then we're going to be slower to the move. And the thing that I love about America is that we're number one. We're dope.
Mhm.
And we can come together, and we can, we are the epicenter of a lot of different things that are really, truly wonderful about the world. And so we have to be on the same page in order to move forward.
Yeah, no, 100%. In your opinion, what is one of the most overrated political issues?
I think the most overrated, and I don't know why it happens, but the thing that I get the most, I go to my conservative friends or somebody. I go, what's on your mind? What is the thing that really resonates with you? They say trans people in sports. And I go, trans people in sports, more than, the rising cost of everything in your life and not, being out budget and not being able to afford the house and white picket fence. That's what you go to. I think it's so overrated because you go and look and see what Charlie Baker, the great governor of Massachusetts that went on to become the NCAA president, testified. There's less than 10 trans athletes in the NCAA. And so we sit here expending so much time on something that has become a sticking point when really what it is, it's just a zeitgeist. And on top of that, I worked at a school where there were trans athletes playing high school. And you know what? One thing was they weren't moving the needle in these high school sports, and at the same time, they were finding a community in a team because I was on my soccer team, I was on my wrestling team, and much more than the wins and losses were the spaghetti stuffers that we were all hanging around, just shooting the breeze at. And so I think that gets lost, is that we're not talking about this kind of crazy influx of the super athletes that are trying to game the system here. I think that it's taken up a lot of time, and I think that it's just a narrative that really, quite frankly, is overrated, and it needs to end. You have to look at the person that's playing that sport on the other side.
Right. Oh, understandable. So then the last one for my rapid fire for you
Yeah.
is, what is one of the most ignored issues that you think that we should be talking about more, that we just, it keeps slipping under the radar?
I think from a perspective, the number one for me is healthcare. I mean, we have to have a Medicare for all system. This is something that other, uh, developed countries don't blink an eye at. I got a lot of friends across the political spectrum from Europe, and when we get into these arguments, Medicare for all, a single payer system, is not one of the things that they would go, oh yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I think that we have to temper our expectations because, again, go back to the corporate money that infiltrates the entire system. This is money that is at the top for all of the congressional representatives. It's healthcare lobbyist money, pharmaceutical money. That's the stuff that makes everything. Temper our expectations so they can make a profit. And so we're for a long time, the Democratic Party said you can't even talk about it. The current congressional representative, my opponent, was somebody that said Medicare for all is a losing ideology. No, it is something that we're getting totally screwed on, and that has risen to number one. It used to be education. Healthcare is something that is a budget buster across the district, across the nation, and we got to rein in that corporate greed.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm happy that we could have you on, and just to kind of start to wrap things up. We're not done yet. Don't worry, I'm not letting you off
Yeah,
the hook.
I could sit here
But
for another 2 hours.
well, this is something you might like because um, I've been told that you're the MAGA whisperer,
MAGA
right?
whisper.
So what is something that conservatives might not understand about you or might misunderstand about you?
I think that if you were to take a flyer and see what's going on, first off, I think that you would agree with way more than what you don't. I think that the label of progressive comes into play, and we are trained to think that we need to pick a side. And I think what you do very well, what I do very well, is we don't need to. This isn't sports teams. I'm a Patriots
Right.
fan through and through, right? Patriots, have a horrible play, they trade a player, and I'm going to be a ride or die. I am always going to be on the side of the Pats. You don't need to do that with congressional representatives. You don't need to do that with a president. You don't need to do that with any elected official. You need to be scrutinizing on a case by case basis each individual and the actions and decisions that they do. Sometimes they are great, and then they're not so great. You have to follow that money, and you have to look at the actual way in which they're meeting you in the community, and they're taking care of you, and the actual ideas that they're talking about. I mean, we just sat here, for instance, and we talked about assault rifle ban. And I learned something. I hope that you learned something. And that's how you meet in the middle, and that's how you solve all this stuff. For other individuals, it's very hard. They hear something super fast, boom, it's like it closes that door. Always want to have the door open, always want to have the conversation as hard or as tough as it can be, because that's the way that we can actually come to a mutual decision together.
Right. So on the flip side to the what might conservatives not understand about you, what do you think it is that liberals might not quite understand about the majority of the Republican base? I mean, Massachusetts alone, we're over 40%. I mean, we really are more of a purple state than we look as far as our representation goes.
Yeah, I think that there is, just with Democrats and Republicans, there's a spectrum of the subscription to the ideology of a party. And I think that what happens is, from a kind of democratic standpoint, from a liberal standpoint, they see everybody as MAGA, and it becomes something that is a conversation stopper. And I think that there's also, in on both sides, what I see is a failure to appreciate the connection that we all have, that is a little bit universal. Everybody has a family that they're looking out for, right? Everybody is, struggles with certain things. One of the things that I do, for instance, I post about my mother is going through cancer, and I kind of interweave that narrative into the journey of Congress, because cancer doesn't discern if you're red or blue. Cancer just, cancer can impact anybody, and that's something universal that we have. And so I think on that, from when we talk about Democrat or Republican and shutting down conversations, I want to get back to the idea that we can uplift each other. There's a human on the other side of that opinion, and that we need to have a little bit more tolerance for each other and be open to those conversations. And so that's what I do. I mean, I'll tell you what, I catch heat from individuals that are on the progressive side that go, why would you even spend your time talking to an individual that's MAGA? And I go, that's exactly who I want to talk to. When I'm knocking doors, I had this one guy, it was in Spencer, Mass. It's a small place, pretty red. And he goes, you probably don't want to talk to me because I'm MAGA. And I go, no, you're exactly who I want to talk to. I want to understand what you're thinking. And guess what? He said property taxes were the thing that was his main concern. And property taxes are my main concern too. The affordability of being able to just survive in today's day and age, that's something that we agree on. And so we've got to get back to finding those common threads there.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, man, I think that you're a strong candidate. I mean, especially up against somebody like Richie Neal. He's been in there since, like you said, since you were a kid. You were born pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's time for change, and you definitely you're gonna make him really have to work for it,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
Like I said, it's a job interview, if anything.
Yeah.
No,
listen, I think you're a cool guy on a personal level. We might have our disagreements politically and stuff, but as we've established, that is That is totally okay. As a human being, I think that you're a good dude.
Yeah, and likewise,
I'll
I really appreciate what you do.
Yeah,
Having these conversations, I think that this is the first step towards rectifying some of the problems that we have going on in society, and it's a perfect example of how we can do it together.
I think we're probably gonna have to get you on an episode when we're all in person
Oh yeah.
with the boys. Maybe we'll do a short episode by the bonfire or something.
Oh, I
sometime
love.
soon.
Yeah, we got to do the bonfire. I'll bring the bush
You know,
light. That's my daily driver.
exactly. Got to get the Bapple. Those are back in stock
You
now.
know what?
So.
The Bapple is too sweet for me.
I'm a pansy. I like the Bapple.
We had peach
But-
for a while too.
Yeah, the peach. I want to try the peach. I never got to try the peach.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, listen, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. I think that this was a great episode. Just kind of show people who you are and whatnot. Everybody's got their opinions, but until they actually listen to you and hear what you have to say, I really think that their opinions don't quite matter as much, because I see you as a lot more of a, yes, you have your left stuff and your progressive stuff, but you're a normal guy that's running,
Yeah.
And I think that we need more normal guys that are running and less establishment stuff. So
Yep.
I'm happy that you came on, man. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Much love. Whatever you need. And anybody that's watching this, reach out. Let's talk.
I'm going to make sure that all of your stuff is going to be, it's going to be right down below. All of your website information, everything else that you want is going to be listed down below in the description.
Love it.
And until next time, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This was Working Theory. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share with everybody that you know. And we'd like to hear what you have to say in the comments. Talk soon.